More than 100 people abducted in the latest mass kidnapping incident in the Nigerian northwestern state of Zamfara. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces kill at least 13 civilians in an attack on a village in Jazeera state. Participants in Mali's National Dialogue Conference recommend extension of current military rule by between 2 to 5 years. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Vivia. Here are more stories making headlines. In the business news, Malawian soya producers find a new market for their products in China. And in your sports, CAF Confederation Cup final between RS Berkane and Zamalek set to be played in Morocco despite an appeal against it. We begin Africa Live in Nigeria, where gunmen have abducted more than 100 people in the latest mass kidnapping incident in the northwestern state of Zamfara. A district head and residents said on Saturday that 3 villages were targeted, and the Friday night raids, 38 men, 67 women, and children have been reported missing. Zamfara is a hot spot for kidnapping gangs who abduct people from villages, highways, and schools and demand ransom from their relatives. Nigeria's military has in recent weeks and months launched offensives targeting bandit hideouts in the region, but the attacks still continue. Our correspondent Ajek Mangut reports.
According to locals, the gunmen took away their victims after raiding 3 villages in Zamfara state on Friday. Those abducted were said to be mostly women and children. The gunmen arrived at the villages in motorbikes and started shooting sporadically before kidnapping the villagers. Northern Nigeria is one of the hot spots for kidnappings in Nigeria, where gunmen attack villages, killing and kidnapping for ransom. At least 11 people were killed and 20 others abducted in the region in the last week of March alone. The government has been carrying out air and land operations in the region, but the attacks by the gunmen have continued. Analysts say the government needs to address root causes of kidnapping, which include high poverty and unemployment rates. There have also been calls for the government to use non-kinetic approach along with military firepower in addressing this security challenge. Nigeria's military has, however, assured that it is working to ensure that it curbs all forms of insecurity in 2024. Ajek Mangut, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, Nigeria has been plagued by a surge in kidnappings, leaving communities in fear and authorities struggling to contain the crisis. The wave of abductions highlights the dire nature of the insecurity gripping the country. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy looks at the history of kidnappings in Nigeria.
In the early 2000s, the Niger Delta witnessed a surge in kidnappings targeting expatriate oil workers based on political and economic issues. Over the years, however, abductions have evolved into a lucrative enterprise for criminal networks operating in the region. In 2014, Boko Haram abducted over 250 schoolgirls in the Borno state town of Chibok. According to Amnesty International, more than 90 of the students are still missing. In 2018, 110 schoolgirls from the Yobe state town of Dapchi were abducted by a faction of Boko Haram. Another major abduction took place in 2020 in the Katsina state town of Kankara, where 300 schoolboys were kidnapped. In 2021, a night raid in Zamfara state led to the abduction of over 300 schoolgirls in Jangebe. And in early March of the same year, all abductees were released after the apparent payment of ransom. In March of 2024, gunmen kidnapped 287 students at a government secondary school in Kaduna State. Groups including bandits, Boko Haram and other extremist factions have been responsible for many of the kidnappings. The incidents have targeted a wide range of individuals, including children, students, government officials and foreign nationals. Despite efforts by the Nigerian government, the perpetrators continue to operate with impunity. Attempts to rescue kidnapped victims and dismantle criminal networks have been ongoing, but challenges persist in addressing the root causes of the problem. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, for some expert analysis on this, let's bring in David Otta-Endele, the director for the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us, David. David, another abduction in Nigeria. For you, you've been watching this unfold for a really long time now. When you hear about the surge in kidnappings in Nigeria, what does it indicate for you, David?
I think it gives a confirmation that kidnapping for ransom in Nigeria is a national pandemic. We're not talking just about the Northeast. We're talking about, areas like the Northwest, even in the southern part of the country. You gave an intro talking about the kidnappings that used to occur in the Niger Delta region. This has moved from kidnapping foreigners to now a position where not just women and children are being kidnapped, but schools are being targeted. We talk about the historical 2014 Chibok girls that marked the beginning of mass kidnapping of students, by non-state actors, the Dapchi girls, the Jangabe boys, so it's been a numerous amount of kidnapping. I mean, some reports do indicate more than 5,000 kidnappings have occurred in Nigeria from 2023 to 2024. And that figure is still on the downside because a lot of these kidnappings go unreported. But the question that a lot of victims and Nigerians are asking is, when will this stop? When will the government be able to do something despite the rhetorics that no ransom should be paid, and that kidnapping now carries a death sentence? But it does seem as a successful industry because the non-state actors keep doing it.
David, I wanted to ask you about the Nigerian government issuing that warning against ransom payments, and that's been going on for a while, even before this administration that's in power now. Yet locals and abduction victims' relatives reportedly continue to pay the ransoms that these kidnappers demand. How is this impacting the problem, David?
I think the government is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. I mean, from a policy point of view, no government wants to have a scenario where it does give a green light signal for people to pay ransom. But at the same time, the government is caught in a position where it doesn't have a preventive or a defensive strategy to counter kidnapping, so it cannot stop it. Therefore, it does issue statements of non-payment of ransom. I think simply because the government understands that where people do pay ransom, it does encourage other non-state actors. So, for example, we had scenarios in 2014 where Boko Haram, a jihadist group linked to Al-Qaeda, was the first to do this. And now, because they succeeded and because ransom has been paid in several occasions, other non-state actors, are now seeing it as a very lucrative area to get involved in. So, it's a very terrible and very challenging position, for the government, issuing this statement and saying no ransom should be paid. But the argument, I have to mention this, is that, for parents, relatives who have, their people being taken by these non-state actors, they do have very little choice to get them back without paying ransom. So it's not just the government caught in limbo here. Even the victims and the families, are caught in a position where either they do leave their relatives in the hands of these non-state actors, or defy the policy of the government that they shouldn't pay ransom to terrorist or non-state actors.
So, David, looking at this issue, it seems to be really complex and also very deep-rooted. Going forward, David, what other actions do you think need to be taken to combat this?
I think it should go beyond issuance of policy statements in regards to non-payment of ransom. I think there has to be some kind of a comprehensive strategy. We've often said that kidnapping takes place locally, and the kind of kidnappings that we're experiencing in Nigeria now, the nature of the quantity, I call it, of people that are taken at a go, does demonstrate that there is a breakdown between the community engagement in terms of giving information to security agencies and the trust that exists, or perhaps one could also say that the fear that these people have, for these non-state actors who seem, in some ways, to have monopolized the use of violence, to kidnap people. So there has to be a very comprehensive strategy. Crime takes place locally. The government needs to revive or review its national strategy when it comes to kidnapping. And of course, we talk about poverty and unemployment. But the truth is, not all poor people get involved in kidnapping, and not all unemployed people get involved in this. So it's difficult to pin a finger on poverty or unemployment. I think where the situation is that people are getting away with it. And because of that, more people are getting involved in kidnapping. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a quick fix. It is a comprehensive strategy that the government requires.
It truly is a tragic and heartbreaking situation. Thank you so much for joining us, David. David Otta Endele, the director for the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies. Well, at least 13 civilians have been killed in an attack by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in a village in Jazeera State in central Sudan. According to a statement from a resistance committee, a number of people were injured in that attack. The RSF took control of Jazeera State in December of 2023 after the Sudanese armed forces withdrew from Wad Madani. The RSF has not yet commented on the allegation. The United Nations warns that 800,000 people in El Fasher were in extreme and immediate danger due to worsening violence and potential unrest. Let's now take a short break. Here's what's still to come on Africa Live. Former Cote d'Ivoire President Laurent Gbagbo announces that he'll vie for the presidency in next year's polls despite being banned. Welcome back to Africa Live. Well, participants in Mali's national dialogue on Friday recommended the extension of the country's transition to civilian rule by several years. Mali has been under military leadership since back-to-back coups in 2020 and 2021. However, tensions have risen over the junta's failure to return the country to constitutional rule on promised timelines. Here's CDTN's Muturi Kaibere with the details.
Hundreds of participants at Mali's national dialogue making several recommendations, including for military leader Colonel Assimi Goita stay at the helm for longer, and that he should be allowed to run for office when elections are finally held, along with extending military rule by 2 to 5 years. Other recommendations tackle the country's security crisis.
The Inter-Malian dialogue recommends opening doctrinal dialogue with the so-called jihadist armed groups and involving Malian scholars in defining the doctrinal corpus of debates with these groups.
The recommendation implies that the junta will stay in power until 2027. The dialogue was boycotted by the majority of opposition, accusing army officers of exploiting it to stay in power. President Goita has insisted the dialogue has been inclusive and free for all Malians to take part. He also called for swift implementation of the recommendations.
The aim of this dialogue was to diagnose the causes of intra-community and inter-community conflicts in order to draw up an architecture for lasting peace, stitch up the social fabric, and strengthen community life. The aim of this inter-Malian dialogue was to preserve national unity and territorial integrity. I am delighted to see that Malians have understood this and taken ownership of the process.
Mali's military leaders had promised to hand over power through polls in February. However, the elections were postponed indefinitely, with military citing a precarious security situation made worse by militant attacks. Muturi Kaibere, CGTN.
Former President of Cote d'Ivoire, Laurent Gbagbo, says he will vie for the country's presidency next year. His Friday announcement comes even as a former head of state remains banned from running for office. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has more.
A ceremony in Abidjan to announce Laurent Gbagbo's bid for the Ivorian presidency under his PPACI party, with thousands in attendance, including supporters, diplomats, traditional chiefs and religious leaders.
Give me power in 2025 and I will give it back to you. The first commitment I make to you is to serve a single term. The second commitment is that our country has experienced many conflicts and we don't know the truth about them. So I will make the justice system independent of the executive.
Gbagbo ruled Cote d'Ivoire between 2000 and 2011 when he was ousted and arrested for refusing to concede defeat to current President Alassane Ouattara. In 2018, Gbagbo was handed a 20-year jail sentence for fraud at the Central Bank of West African states. President Ouattara gave him a presidential pardon in 2022. Now, his supporters feel he deserves a second chance, although Gbagbo still needs his civic rights back to be able to run.
The Ivorian government has an obligation to reinstate Laurent Gbagbo on electoral roll. This is a fundamental issue. It is a question of commitment and political will on part of the authorities. Gbagbo is innocent and he must be reinstated. We are convinced that he will take part in this election and he will win it.
In the history of Cote d'Ivoire, there have been people who were ineligible but they fought to be eligible. So we are investing in our candidate, Laurent Gbagbo, today, and we are going to fight to make him eligible.
However, analysts feel Gbagbo's restoration is a hard sell now.
The level of popular support that Gbagbo enjoyed in 1990 and 2010 is not the same today. The first issue is that time has worked against him. The second factor is the internal instability within the party he founded. Therefore, Gbagbo's popularity in 1990 and 2010 is not the same in 2024.
Now, Gbagbo's bid for the 2025 presidential election hangs in the balance as supporters hope he will be granted a chance to vie for presidency. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
The China Foundation for Rural Development is celebrating 5 years of providing humanitarian assistance and doing charity work in Ethiopia. A special ceremony celebrating the foundation's achievement was held in the capital, Addis Ababa. The event also saw the launch of another crucial Chinese project that will contribute to the country's development. Caroline B. tells us more.
The China Foundation for Rural Development has been implementing charitable projects in Ethiopia for 5 years now. Since then, more than 320,000 people have benefited from the organization's work, including school feeding projects, food support, Panda Pack school bags distribution, solar lighting, women economic empowerment, and water and hygiene programs. A colorful ceremony in Ethiopia's capital, attended by beneficiaries, government officials, Chinese diplomats, and representatives of Chinese enterprises, celebrated the foundation's achievements.
The China Foundation for Rural Development has done a great job to strengthening our people-to-people friendship over the past 5 years. They have undertaken a lot of charitable projects in many cities, villages, and schools, addressing the diverse needs of communities across Ethiopia.
Ethiopia's Minister of Women and Social Affairs said the foundation had made significant changes in people's lives and the Ethiopian government would partner with the charity for further development.
We just would love to collaborate with the China Foundation in various ways. This means the already established programs, and we also would love to expand that one to the social protection programs initiatives that the government has already set.
As part of the anniversary celebrations, the foundation and the Chinese Chamber of Commerce launched a program that will see Chinese personnel offer their skills in developing Ethiopian communities.
Today, we launched the Chinese Enterprises Volunteer Project. That's another pilot project from our office that aims to gather the human resources from Chinese companies and Chinese employees and to use their expertise and skills to promote, to contribute to the development of the local communities.
The China Foundation for Rural Development has invested more than $10.5 million in humanitarian activities in Ethiopia, expanding its operations to nearly all regions in the country. And with its work aligning with some of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, there is hope that the organization will help improve the lives and livelihoods of many Ethiopians. Caroline B., CGTN.
In Uganda, bird watchers are warning of a threat to insect populations, which are essential sources of energy for migratory birds, which feed on them during their long journeys down south during the winter. This is largely due to the destruction of the insect habitats. To mark World Migratory Day, bird watchers gathered at the Botanical Gardens in Entebbe, which is one of the resting sites for migratory birds. Isabel Nakiria reports.
A bird-watching checklist at the Botanical Gardens in Entebbe as birders celebrate diversity. Uganda has more than 1,000 different species of birds. Close to 10 million migratory birds fly down to Uganda from the northern hemisphere every year during winter.
All these warblers that migrate from the north, from the Palearctic kind of like regions to eastern and southern Africa pass through here as well. So again, if you come in I'd say January, December, February, you'll find all of these acacia trees around here full of warblers who are searching for insects and feeding before they go south or on their way back north.
This habitat has been preserved with indigenous and fruit trees where birds can perch and feed from. But such trees are under threat because of their medicinal value, and so are insects that nest here and are food to birds.
The insects stay on these trees. The insects also feed from these trees that the birds come onto to get food. So if you're cutting down a tree that takes at least 5 years to grow, then what would you expect?
Uganda has about 12 bird watching sites, the Botanical Gardens inclusive. Bird watching brings in more than $6 million in revenues. Hundreds of migratory birds rest at this popular site in Entebbe to feed before making their way back to Europe. It's rich in flora and fauna, and its close proximity to the lake makes it a conducive bird habitat. But the amount of waste being dumped into the lake is a worry to birders, and they say this is a risk to the birds. The limestone wetlands provide a good source of food for birds, including some fishes and insects. Lake flies swarm this bird-watching site, but pollution into these habitats means less nutritious diets for the birds during their long journeys to Uganda.
Because of population growth, this waste is becoming overwhelming for the wetlands to manage that capacity. So as such, the wetlands are dying out, and these are some of the places where insects can thrive well. So if insects have nothing to eat, then the birds will have nothing to eat.
Forests and grasslands have been transformed into agriculture farms, and the use of pesticides is posing a threat to millions of birds that stop over here during their flight routes. And with the campaigns to plant more trees and protect water bodies and wetlands, bird watchers say there is potential to make Uganda a bird paradise and attract more tourists and revenues. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Entebbe, Uganda.
Let's now take a look at what's coming up in the business news. Malawian soya producers find a new market for their products in China.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Malawi's soya industry has made a breakthrough into the Chinese market as the southern African country seeks to boost its agricultural exports. The move comes after more than 200 tons of soybeans were exported to China. The amount is said to increase exponentially as the country aims to use its agricultural commodities to boost the economy. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
Malawi's soya industry has received a welcome boost, with its products now set to enter the Chinese market. The move comes after more than 200 tons of soybeans was exported to China as part of an initial trial, with another additional consignment of more than 20,000 tons also headed that way.
This is a beginning for Malawi, I can say. As you know, the soybeans is accepted by Chinese government, Chinese buyer, and there is a huge demand for the soybeans in China, and it opens a door for Malawi farmers, Malawi traders.
China is seeking over 100,000 tons of soybeans, and this demand opens up opportunities for Malawian producers. The Malawian government aims to use agricultural exports to boost the economy, and the country has already signed export protocols with China. And it has also done so with macadamia nuts and dried chilies, as it hopes to boost its exports into China.
China has offered a preferential duty and quota-free market access for Malawian soybeans to China.
For now, the soya industry hopes to exceed the $6.9 million worth of exports in 2023, with a key focus placed on the Chinese market. Travis Andrews, CGTN.
Benin's block to block Niger's first crude of oil export through its port puts at risk the landlocked country's plan to begin exporting oil. The blockade is as a result of ongoing border disputes. The Benin government says it will only permit Niger to use its port if the neighboring country reopens its side of the border. Niger has been producing about 20,000 barrels per day, primarily for domestic consumption due to the lack of an export route. The Chinese-built 2,000-kilometer pipeline holds significant economic potential for Niger, with experts predicting China's contribution to normalizing relations between the two nations. Relations between the two countries strained since the Nigerian junta took over power. Benin reopened its border with Niger on February the 26th following ECOWAS's lifting sanctions by Niger, diversified its trade routes, importing more through Burkina Faso, Togo, and Nigeria. Citizens of the two West African nations have different views on the issue.
China has invested more than 400 billion Central African franc in the pipeline project and is obviously expecting a significant return on investment. Similarly, Benin and Niger have much to gain from this project, so I think China will get involved and play a crucial role as a mediator. China must help the two countries negotiate to define new bases of cooperation.
We have taken the sovereign decision to keep our border with Benin closed because there are French bases on Benin's territory and terrorists are being trained on some of these bases to destabilize our country.
Well, property developers in Nigeria are contending with the rising cost of building materials, which is posing significant threats to the construction sector and worsening the current housing shortage. The country is grappling with galloping inflation, which has hit the real estate sector hard. Property developers are now forced to make a decision on either absorbing the additional expenses, risking reduced profits, or passing them on to consumers through higher property prices. CGTN's Deji Badimosi has more on the story.
Supervising one of her building projects in Lagos, Omolola Detona is making sure the artisans are paying attention to detail. A civil engineer by training, she's a builder and has been in property development for several years now.
It's been tough. When we Started most of our projects, cement was at 6,500. Now, cement is going to almost 11,000. Then it came back to about 9,000 naira now. Now that is actually quite very challenging because we had already established the prices for most of the real estate that we're selling out. So our client already knows the price. It's tough now delivering without it going back to cost increase.
It's a challenge for virtually every property developer in the country, and it's driving up the price of real estate, making home ownership even more difficult. Despite the situation, there's no visible slowdown in construction, especially in cities like Lagos and Abuja.
Constructions are not going to reduce, obviously. Yes, constructions are actually, people are, like, why? Housing is a basic necessity. So let's even look at it from that standpoint. People are always going to need homes. So if you're not the one building, you are renting. You're not going to live under the bridge, right? So construction will continue to go on, but someone has got to bear the cost of it, which is then the end user.
But affordability remains a big issue, leaving many new buildings vacant in cities like Lagos because people can simply not afford them. There are also fears that if prices of building materials continue in the current upward trajectory, there might begin to be more cases of abandoned projects.
People have to learn to put in a robust figure for contingencies so that whatever happens, you don't end up with unfinished projects and abandoned projects because they cannot finish anymore.
So we're hoping that if the government intervenes in reducing the cost of our materials drastically, it will encourage more people to spring up again and buy into this massive investment.
Nigeria is estimated to have a 28 million housing deficit, and officials say at least $14 billion is needed to resolve the country's housing gap. The continued hike in construction cost will no doubt make it more difficult to close that huge housing gap. Deji Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The sports news is coming up next, including CAF Confederation Cup final between RS Berkane and Zamalek set to be played in Morocco despite an appeal against it.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Well, the final of the African Confederation Cup will go ahead as planned, with the first leg scheduled to be played in Morocco between host RS Berkane and Egyptian outfit Zamalek in what is essentially a repeat of the 2019 final between the two clubs. The Confederation of African Football has confirmed that the tie will be played on Sunday at the Berkane Municipal Stadium, despite an active appeal currently pending at the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland filed by Algerian side USM Alger. The Algerians refused to take to the pitch against Berkane during the two legs of their semi-final tie over a map emblazoned on the Moroccan side's shirts that had a map of Morocco, including the disputed Western Sahara. Both RS Berkane and Zamalek have won the title twice and lost out once in the final. Zamalek will be chasing their second title in 5 years. Amidst the off-field drama and the legal challenges that the competition faces, here is a backgrounder to the controversy, which is far from over. Well, South Africa's famed sprinters, world record holder Wade van Niekerk and former African champion Akani Simbine inspired the Rainbow Nations men's 4x100 and men's 4x400 teams to qualify for the Paris Olympics at the Bahamas World Relays. It was a commendable showing, considering only 5 African nations managed to qualify their teams to Paris at the event. CGTN CS Duplessis has more.
South Africa will send 2 relay teams to the 2024 Paris Olympics, with track stars Akani Simbine and world record holder Wade van Niekerk leading the charge in the 4x100 meter and 4x400 meter events respectively, giving the Rainbow Nation 2 additional opportunities to claim medals at the global sporting showpiece.
I think the South African media has forever been harping on about lost medals in terms of the relay, so it's great to actually see 2 medal prospects qualifying for the Olympics. Okay, it's the first step. They've qualified, but it's a crucial step. You can't win medals if you're not there.
Now, relays are fun. It's the one time that individual, because I mean, we all individuals as athletes, your focus is starting to finish and it's about me. And for suddenly now you've got to rely on 3 other guys to actually get a baton around. Firstly, that's hard enough. The changeovers, sprinting into a changeover, accelerating out of it, getting a baton around, that's what makes it fun. And you're competing up against guys. It's the first time you go shoulder to shoulder, really, and you're knocking guys.
The 2016 Olympic champion will take center stage in the 400-meter event and will carry the hopes of a nation when he begins his quest for another medal in the famous one-lap race. The relay, however, will provide van Niekerk with a chance to express himself and do it with a team for the first time in over a decade.
And I think World Relays really helped him. I think that opportunity just to go out there and run free, which is what relays allow you to do. I mean, there's no blocks, there's no race plan. You just get a baton and you run, whether it's the 100 or the 400, you just run free. And I think for Wade, that freeness and that openness just allowed him to, okay, hang on, wait, I've got what it takes. It's there. All that negativity that he's had kind of, I think, just exploded and disappeared.
He anchored South Africa to a bronze medal at the World Student Games in 2013. And since then, he wasn't available for South African relays. So that kind of brings up another question. He obviously sees a medal there. And I think I saw an interview where he did say the guys kind of had to kind of coax him into running. And the fact that you've got three athletes that do run, that have kind of sub 45 times, probably also played into his mind.
The relay events tend to stir up excitement amongst the fans in the stands. That's due to the unpredictability of the event combined with the sheer quality of athletes competing. It makes for a superb spectator event. That's why South Africa will hope that they execute their races perfectly so that their wait for a relay medal that extends back to 1920 can finally come to an end in the French capital this year. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
Well, retired Kenyan Olympian and 2-time world marathon champion Catherine Ndereba says she's excited about the upcoming Olympics in Paris. The former marathon record holder is optimistic Kenya will put up a good show in France, where many Kenyans have won athletic accolades. Here's CGTN's Muturi Kaibere with more.
Catherine Ndereba is a household name in global athletics. The Kenyan made her name in road running, where she became a 2-time world marathon champion and a 2-time silver medalist in the 2004 and 2008 Olympic Games.
I don't have any regrets, first of all. I know that I've given it all, and all I can say is that whenever you go for any competition, chances are only 2. You either win or lose. And so with the result, I'm very grateful to God and I'm very contented.
She also broke the world marathon record in 2001, posting a time of 2 hours, 18 minutes and 47 seconds. She became an inspiration to Kenyan women athletes. At the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, Kenya clinched 10 medals, with the female athletes winning half the whole. 2 gold medals, 2 silver medals and 1 bronze medal matching the men. In the 2021 World Championships in Athletics, Kenya won 10 medals, with the ladies picking up a gold medal, 3 silver and 2 bronze. In the 2023 World Championships in Budapest, all 3 of Kenya's gold medals were picked by the ladies.
I'm very proud of the women. Not that I'm not proud of the men, I'm equally proud of all. But what I can say is that majority of our women athletes come to a point of believing in themselves, because as I used to run, I used to tell myself, what a man can do, a woman can do better. And for Lil, the women now are living that.
For Catherine, the countdown to the 2024 Paris Olympics excites her the most.
I would say I'm so excited to be here and looking forward for the big ones, doing the work. of making this country great and proud, as they have always been doing.
Kenya has an ambitious medal target at the Olympic Games, targeting to surpass the medals won in the previous editions of the Games. Muturi Kaibere, CGTN.
Tunisian President Kais Saied ordered the National Swimming Federation dissolved after the country's flag was covered at a meet in Tunis in response to sanctions by the World Anti-Doping Agency. Images on social media showed the flag covered by a red cloth on Friday during the Tunisian Open Masters Championship organized by the National Swimming Federation. At the end of April, WADA suspended Tunisia's National Anti-Doping Agency for non-compliance with its code. Tunisian authorities have announced amendments meant to bring the country in line with the code, but WADA has yet to lift its sanctions. On Friday night, the president turned up at the pool near Tunis, raised the flag and sang the national anthem before ordering the dissolution of the Swimming Federation.
Here in Tunisia, who is allowed to cover the Tunisian flag? This cannot be tolerated. Those who talk about the Olympic Committee, the instructions. Tunisia comes before the Olympic Committee and before any other committee. This is an act of aggression. It will not be tolerated, no matter who is involved.
Olympic champion Chen Meng of China was crowned world table tennis Saudi smash queen on Saturday after winning an epic battle against world number 1 and top seed Sun Yingxia, also of China, in a repeat of the final of Tokyo 2020. In a thrilling women's singles final, Sun Yingxia dominated the opener 11-6, but Chen Meng replied in style, claiming the following 3 games to go 3-1. Sun, who had beaten her compatriot in their last 6 meetings, won the 5th game, but Chen Meng maintained her composure to close 4-2 and claim the title.
This win was totally unexpected for me because I have been the underdog in the past 2 years competing against Sun Yingxia. So today, I really had a fighter mentality. I really approached this match with this mentality to try to learn from the skills of a young player like Sun Yingxia. So, I am really so excited now. I'm very happy that my Saudi Smash journey has been so memorable. I would like to thank the stage of the Saudi Smash, and also I would like to thank all the fans and the spectators who cheered both of us today.
In the men's singles final, top-ranked Chinese player Wang Chujin faced off against German Patrick Franziska. Wang secured the victory with a 4-2 scoreline, clinching his 3rd title of the tournament. Wang dominated the opening exchanges, winning the first 3 sets, despite a resilient fight back from Franziska, who claimed the next 2 sets with scores of 12-8 and 12-10. Wang regained control in the 6th set, securing an 11-6 victory. And that's how we end this edition of Africa Live. Remember that you can send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. From me, Hannah Vivier, and the rest of the Africa Live team, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.
welcome. I'm Li Chouyan in Beijing. You're watching Zoom In, coming to you live. We'll zoom in on the big stories this week and bring you the finer details coming up. China eyes a boost in cooperation with Europe as Chinese President Xi Jinping concludes his three-nation trip.
President Xi's visit to France, Serbia, and Hungary have set the blueprint for future development across the Eurasia continent.
Israel defies international calls to halt its attack on Rafah and orders more evacuations, triggering further displacement.
Around 1/3 of Rafah city was ordered to leave. People who were asked to move left their homes, and some of them were already IDPs for the 7th or 8th time.
Plus, protests on U.S. campuses in support of the Palestinians spill over to Europe, causing clashes and arrests. Before we get to those details, my colleague Jiayang is here to give us a roundup of other top stories making headlines this hour. Jiayang.
And we start in Russia. Russia says at least 7 people were killed in the border city of Belgorod when a Ukrainian missile strike caused a building to collapse. Reports said 15 others in the multi-story apartment block were injured. It wasn't immediately clear what specific weapons were used in the attack or if they were supplied by the West. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday that its air defense forces destroyed 2 Soviet-era conventional ballistic missiles launched overnight by Ukrainian forces over the Belgorod region. At least 136 people have died in Brazil's southernmost state because of heavy rains. Officials say another 125 people remain unaccounted for. Storms and floods have battered Rio Grande do Sul state in recent days. Over 500,000 people have been displaced. The southern state lies at a geographical meeting point between tropical and polar atmospheres, and this leads to periods of heavy rain or drought. Local scientists believe the weather pattern has intensified due to climate change. Canadian authorities have arrested a 4th Indian national over the 2023 killing of a separatist Sikh activist in Vancouver. The suspect, 22-year-old Amandeep Singh, was already in custody for unrelated gun charges. He was then charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the case of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. 3 other Indian nationals were arrested earlier this month. Authorities say they are investigating whether these men had ties to the Indian government. India labelled Nijjar a terrorist for campaigning for an independent Sikh homeland. It also accused Canada of what it called a political compulsion to blame New Delhi for the Sikh activist's death. Catalans have voted in a regional election that could see the return to power of a separatist politician who led a 2017 breakaway attempt or an anti-independence government led by the Socialist Party. Opinion polls forecast a comfortable lead for socialist candidate Salvador Illa over the hardline separatist Junts party led by exiled politician Carles Puigdemont and its more moderate rival ERC. ERC now governs the wealthy northeastern region. Former Catalonia President Puigdemont faces prosecution in Spain over the failed independence bid, which triggered the country's worst political crisis in decades. He is set to return home following an amnesty put forward by the Socialist National Government. And that's all from me, Tilia, and it's back to you.
Thanks so much, Jaya. Mutual respect, close ties, and future cooperation are the major outcomes of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visits to France, Serbia, and Hungary from May 5th to the 10th. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei breaks it down for us.
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and France. The two sides have agreed to expand cooperation in green energy, smart manufacturing, biomedicine, and artificial intelligence. The leaders also exchanged views on the Ukraine crisis and the Palestine-Israel issue.
It has to be done just to understand each other because we have very different culture, civilization. So I think, yes, they should do that and try to understand. Because, well, when you have a negotiation, of course, everybody is expressing its, official position, but you have to go further than that.
On the sidelines of official meetings, President Xi was invited to the Pyrenees Mountains for more informal talks and a chance to strengthen personal bonds. Chinese compatriots from nearby cities rallied at the Tarbes airport. Many had traveled overnight to extend their welcome.
We students are very excited to witness this historic moment of Sino-French friendship.
We are here to warmly greet President Xi.
The two presidents and their wives watched folk dances and enjoyed local cuisine. President Macron visited the area often as a child, as his late grandmother lived nearby, bringing his guests here seen as an extension of warmth and a setting to build closer ties. Enthusiasm and hospitality continued on the second leg of President Xi's trip. The Chinese president was greeted by a crowd of some 15,000 people assembled in front of the Palace of Serbia. Receiving thunderous applause and cheers, President Xi waved to the crowd at the building's balcony alongside President Alexander Vučić.
For our country, for our President Vučić, and for us, it's very, very important this day.
During the two leaders' talks, President Xi said the ironclad friendship between China and Serbia has stood the test of the changing international landscape. They agreed to expand cooperation to generate positive economic and social impacts.
We are foreseeing collaboration in research in space, but also elevation of poverty. So these are our two main topics. Amazing day for Serbia, and I think this is a big step for future collaboration between our two countries.
The two leaders have signed a joint statement on the building of a China-Serbia community with a shared future in the new era, an upgrade of bilateral relations. Arriving in Budapest, President Xi was welcomed by students from the Hungarian Chinese bilingual school. The Chinese president visited the school in 2009 and replied to a letter to them earlier this year, encouraging the students to strive to welcome envoys to further develop the two nations' friendship.
学中文多长时间了？已经10年了。10年了，难怪中文说得这么好。对，要想发音，现在什么感受呀？很开心。
People-to-people exchange is just one example of cooperation, as the two countries expanding ties within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative.
The Belt and Road Initiative, coming from China to other countries. I call simple this part of BRI as Western opening of China.
China and Hungary have decided to elevate bilateral relations to all-weather, comprehensive, strategic partnership in the new era. President Xi's 6-day trip marks his first visit to Europe in nearly 5 years.
France is the biggest power in the European Union nowadays, so it is very important to discuss when Serbia and Hungary in the Central Eastern European countries, they are the biggest partners of China, and of course for us, China is the biggest partner from if we see outside of the European Union.
China regards Europe as an important dimension in its major country diplomacy. China and Europe are striving to seek cooperation. President Xi's visit to France, Serbia, and Hungary have set the blueprint for future development across Eurasia continent. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's European tour has deepened relations with France, Serbia, and Hungary, both politically and economically. Officials and experts share with CGTN their thoughts and expectations on bilateral relations. Listen.
Relationship between states and powerful nations everywhere in the world are based upon, as a last resort, the personal understanding and trust of those who are engaging in the discussion and the dialogue. So President Macron's invitation in the Pyrenees is very much echoing, if I may, the nice invitation of President Xi in Guangdong, where Macron was in the last visit he paid to China. Again, I think it's a very good thing, and I personally think that it is, again, essential to have good personal relationship on top of the tough and hard discussion that necessarily you have when you are defending great interests.
Our relationship with China is very predictable, very clear. It's only going to become stronger and go from a strength to a strength. Now, it is a complicated world. We live in a time of geopolitical recession, and we're all acutely aware of that. So China's approach globally that is enshrined in the 3 global initiatives of China, the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilizational Initiative is something that Serbia truly respects and supports. And as a matter of fact, during President Xi's visit to Belgrade this week, Serbia formally supported and joined those global initiatives, which I think tells volumes about our relationship for the future in the multipolar world.
Prime Minister Orban mentioned that these 75 years have been of continuous friendship. President Xi mentioned that right now, our relations have reached the highest level of their history. So the two sides agreed during the visit and signed a declaration on that they will raise the level of cooperation to the level of strategic partnership. It means, I think, that the all field cooperation, all side cooperation between the two countries will continue. The principles, what we have been developing in our relations and pursuing in our relations, will be still on. Principles which are important for both sides. This is mutual respect and benefits, respect for each other, choice for road and development.
His Excellency Xi Jinping came to Hungary, a country which is 100 times larger, like Hungary, takes the time and visiting us, and we are making very huge businesses on many fields, in the electricity sector, in IT sector, in the automobile delivery, education. I think it's a great thing, and we hope that we can be, or we will be, the first partner of China in Europe, in the European Union, to say to be the gateway to Europe, to China.
This year we will held the second China International Supply Chain Expo. We believe that will be a perfect platform for Hungarian government to attract more investment from China, and also for Hungarian companies to find partners along the supply chain from the upstream, midstream to the downstream. We can find more potential partners together.
Let's dig a little deeper here. We are pleased to have with us Mr. Cui Hongjian, Director of Center for European Union and Regional Development Studies at Beijing Foreign University Studies, and Professor Joaf Toker from the American Graduate School in Paris. Welcome to you both, professors. Let me start with Mr. Cui first. Now, during President Xi's state visits, we saw an upgrade in bilateral ties and expanded cooperation in a number of fields. What's your take on these outcomes?
Well, we can find out 2 points to understand why it's time for China and those European countries to promote their bilateral cooperation. As we know, firstly, it's a very natural outcomes for this bilateral cooperation between China and France, Hungary and Serbia. Especially, for example, now between China and France, not only we need to strengthen the traditional cooperation on the area of the civil energy, nuclear energy and aviation. And also we need to explore some new area for cooperation, including new energy and green economy and digital and biotechnology and some other. For example, and also for this China-Serbia cooperation, not only we are focusing on continually this infrastructure cooperation, and also some cooperation for digital and the green economy. And also the same case for Hungary. And I think, of course, another point we need to take is now it's time for China and the European countries to strengthen this cooperative dimension or direction, especially in the background of the more and more anti-globalization or more protectionism tendencies. I think it will give some more confidence, not only for more and more European countries, and also for international community.
Professor Toker, let me bring you into this. You're joining us from Paris. Now, during President Xi's trip to France, 18 cooperation agreements were signed. How do you look at these outcomes? What's your takeaway from it? What's your expectations for future China-France relations?
Well, that's considerable. 18 contracts
There were similar numbers signed in Belgrade and in Budapest. I would introduce some kind of distinction here between the purely economical aspects and related to trade and commerce and cooperation economically, and the political ones. And my guess is that the so-called political aspects were more important, perhaps, over the Parisian 2-3 days of President Xi's stay than in the Hungarian and Serbian ones, due to the fact that West European countries, members of the EU, are extremely attentive right now to what is considered to be the major, by far the major issue on the European agenda, namely the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is taking place less than 2 hours flight away from where I'm talking to you in Paris, right? It may be difficult to observe this and to comprehend it fully when you look at it from Beijing or from Washington. But when you're looking at it from Berlin or Paris or Rome or Madrid, this is very clear. So the French and German and EU expectation as a whole is to believe that the Chinese diplomacy and President Xi in person, who is going to meet with President Putin, I understand, in about 2 weeks, could be helpful in appeasing the situation and towards pushing towards some kind of connections, shall I say, negotiation perhaps, which will perhaps be a turn in those over 2 years of bloody war next door to where the EU operates.
You know, France, Serbia, and Hungary were President Xi Jinping's first diplomatic tour in 2024. Mr. Cui, how significant are these in developing ties between China and the EU?
As we know now, it's time for both China and the EU. We could build up more some strategic, mutual trust. We can find out more and more expectation from the European Union side on China about the, just like Professor Toker mentioned, the Ukrainian crisis or Middle East issues and some other. So I think now this visit, it issued a very, very clear message to European Union side that China and the EU could find some more common ground, and we can even find some common solutions to help the situation, not only in Ukraine and also in some other regional conflict. I think secondly, it's time for China and the European Union to deepen their existing cooperation, economic, trade, and investment. Especially now, European Union is still regarding itself as an opening economy. So to support more on a free trade and the open economy could be a common ground for China and the European Union. And the third is, as we know, recent years, there were some discussions within European Union to change its policy towards China on the basis of misperception about China. So now I think at this moment, Mr. Xi's visit to European Union will be helpful to promote a kind of belying mutual perception with each other. So I think it gives a very, very strong dynamic and also very strong fundamental for this cooperation between China and the European Union in the future.
Professor Toker, President Xi stressed the need to build a bridge between China and Europe. How do you think this visit is being perceived by European countries? What kind of impact this trip has on China-Europe ties amid this tense geopolitical landscape?
As I saw in the text of President Xi coming from Hungary, quoting apparently a Chinese proverb, which says that in a way the distance between Budapest, the capital of Hungary, and Beijing is smaller than the distance between Budapest and Brussels, which is the official capital of the EU, because, said President Xi, when aspirations and ambitions are common, oceans and chains of mountains do not stop partners to go ahead. That's very beautiful and literary and almost romantic. Could be true also in several domains, mainly economic. But when it comes to concrete agenda, which is now dominating Europe and other regions of the world, I would say that we will have a good indications of what President Xi visit really achieved over a relatively short period, a few weeks, when President Putin and President Xi have the talks in Beijing very shortly, and when the Europeans and Chinese will publish in a matter of 2-3 months, perhaps slightly more, the so-called reports on their inquiries regarding the commercial industrial behavior of China regarding export to Europe, and European countries regarding China in a retaliatory way. And this could be more or less pleasant regarding the overall balance in the relations between the European continent and China.
Thank you very much, Professor Choker and Professor Cui Hongjian, live for us there. Appreciate your insights and perspectives. Let's now take a short break here on Zoom In. Coming up next, Palestinians are forced to move yet again as Israel pushes on with its attack on Rafah despite international warnings. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Despite mounting international calls for an immediate ceasefire, Israel is continuing its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. All eyes are on Rafah after an Israeli evacuation order sent thousands of Palestinians who were forced to seek refuge there fleeing. Israel has already launched what it called targeted attacks there, but fears of a full-scale invasion loom. Germany and the EU have condemned the clearance order as the UN Secretary General again appealed for a permanent truce. U.S. President Joe Biden says a ceasefire could happen almost immediately if Hamas releases the Israeli prisoners captured on October 7th. In Israel itself, thousands of people protested against the government for not doing more to free those hostages. And joining us live now is our correspondent Martin Lowe from Erez. Martin, thank you for joining us. The EU has strongly condemned this latest evacuation order in Rafah. How are the authorities there responding?
Sure, I'll come to that. Let me just take a moment to tell you where we are. We traveled to the Erez crossing. That's the last place where aid is continuing to go from Israel into Gaza. We were hoping to investigate that, but we were turned away by the Israeli military. They've closed off the entire area. So we're now right on the Gaza border. Behind me, there is a huge concrete wall which separates the two territories. The military have erected these really tall cranes, which they're using as observation posts to direct their artillery fire into Gaza. From here, particularly the city of Jabalia, where fighting is continued, we can hear artillery from time to time. But to come back to your question, yes, there is now a chorus of disapproval facing Israel, the EU, but also the US, the UN and other countries. Nevertheless, Israel is committed to continuing its offensive in Rafah. It says it needs to destroy the Hamas leadership so that they can't reform and allow something like this to happen in the future. Israel insists it is trying to minimize civilian casualties as much as possible, but it says that is made difficult, sometimes impossible, by the fact that Hamas uses civilians as human shields. Now, thousands of people have now been told to leave central and northern parts of the city of Rafah in the south of Gaza. That's after the east of Rafah was captured by the Israeli army. They're now pushing forward into the central and northern areas, and there are tens of thousands of people who are moving from there. But they are saying they don't know where to go. There is so much fighting in that area, they don't know which is safe, where is a safe place and where isn't. And also this concern from aid agencies who are saying the humanitarian zones that have been established simply aren't big enough to cope with the exodus of so many people.
Now, thousands took to the streets in Israel demanding the government do more to secure the release of hostages. What are you hearing on this?
This has become a regular event once a week. There is a huge protest in the centre of Tel Aviv, sometimes in other cities as well. It's primarily people who are connected with the hostages. There are families of the hostages there. They are demanding that the government does more. There's also a demonstration at the same time by people who want the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to resign. So this has been going on for some time, but it is getting bigger now that the conflict seems to be at a critical point. But one thing which is really exercising people's minds here in Israel today is a report that surfaced from the US, where the US has apparently made an offer to supply Israel with what it describes as sensitive intelligence, which will tell the Israeli forces where the Hamas leadership are hiding and where the underground tunnels are in Rafah. This is the principal objective for the Israeli army. There's consternation, if not anger here. The offer from the US apparently is conditional on the attack on Rafah being either abandoned or scaled right back. But people are saying, if the US have this intelligence, why have they not shared it before? The US and Israel are allies. Clearly, Israel has been involved in this conflict now for 7 months. So there is a huge concern here. Why, if this intelligence exists, it hasn't been shared? It could potentially have saved thousands of lives. Among the hostages that Israel is trying to free, there are some with US citizenship. People are saying they could have been freed by now if the US had come forward with this information. So I think we'll be hearing more about that in the coming days.
Right. Thank you so much for the latest. Martin Lowe, live for us from the Erez border crossing. International criticism is being leveled at Israel's insistence on a ground attack on Rafah. EU Chief Charles Michel wrote on social media that it is unacceptable for Israel to evacuate Palestinian civilians in Rafah to unsafe zones. Michel called on Israel to call off its plan. He also stressed crossing points must remain fully functioning. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says the assaults would be irresponsible and lead to a massive loss of civilian lives if Israel did so. The German leader said in a webcast that he had shared his idea with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. For more analysis, let me bring in Dr. Ulrich Bruckner, professor for European Studies at Stanford University in Berlin. Great to see you there, Professor. Now, one of Israel's key allies, Germany, has condemned the recent evacuation orders in Rafah and again warned against an all-out ground invasion. What's your take on this new development?
Well, it doesn't really come as a surprise because Germany was among the countries that heavily criticized the Netanyahu government before October for democratic backsliding, for developments of corruption, for polarizing the country. So being an ally doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot criticize if something goes wrong there. And now if the whole world is united in the point on it only causes a humanitarian catastrophe if you send further troops to the most densely populated part of the Gaza Strip, then there must be a reason. It's not politicized anymore. It's just out of humanitarian positions. And Germany, in that respect, is a good ally by criticizing the government for doing things that get totally out of control.
And in a recent vote at the UN General Assembly, only 2 EU countries voted against granting full membership to Palestine, with some even signaling support, officially recognizing the state of Palestine in the coming weeks. What does this say about EU's stance on this issue?
Well, the EU is not a state, and there are reasons why we only have a coordinator for foreign and security policy, because each and every member state has a very different perspective on the region and different ties, and Germany in particular, a very delicate relationship with the people of Israel. But having said this, it is important to keep in mind that an alternative to a two-state solutions goes without saying. So it must be the long-term perspective. And the United States, as well as Germany, agree on that is the goal. Whether it's the right means is a matter of discussion. So it's no longer a question if there should be a two-state solution, but how is it best to make it work.
Professor, thank you so much for taking the time talking to us. We appreciate you joining us. Professor Bruckner joining us live there. Universities across the United States are still seeing pro-Palestinian protests. Some students have been suspended, some arrested, and many graduation ceremonies canceled or postponed. Protest camps have sprung up across the U.S. in recent weeks as students demand their universities stop doing business with Israel or companies that support its war efforts. Idis Tanyashian has more from Los Angeles.
Tensions have ratcheted up in standoffs between the police and student protesters on campuses across the United States. A 3-week-long pro-Palestinian encampment at MIT is among the latest to be raided and demolished by police on Friday before dawn. Police used physical force to disperse students demanding their university to disclose their finances and divest from Israeli companies. Several students had been suspended in recent days. Similar scenes unfolded at the University of Pennsylvania, where 33 people, including students and faculty members, were arrested and charged with defiant trespass after police raided and demolished their encampment. At the nation's capital, George Washington University students continue to stage protests days after hundreds of police demolished their encampment, arresting 33 protesters. California also saw many crackdowns on student protests, but the encampment at UC Berkeley continued to grow, with solidarity from faculty members, which came after allegations of anti-Semitism forced the regional superintendent to testify on Wednesday in Congress.
When investigations show that an anti-Semitic event has occurred, we take action to teach, correct, and redirect our students. We do not publicly share our actions because student information is private and legally protected under federal and state law. As a result, some believe we do nothing. This is not true.
The University of Minnesota is among the rare institutions that agreed to listen to student protesters who addressed their university's Board of Regents on Friday.
I don't believe that war, violence, apartheid, and turning innocent people into refugees is in line with the University of Minnesota's stated values or mission. And I would hope that you don't believe that either, and that all of you will use your power as regents to do something about it.
The University of Minnesota disclosed this week that less than 1% of their investments are tied to Israeli companies. Pleased by the disclosure, students are now pushing for total divestment.
But experts say for most institutions, even the disclosure of endowments and investment portfolios can be a tricky process, exposing them to politics and even financial competition. Here at the UCLA, the administration outright rejected these demands, saying it would violate academic freedoms. But students continue to organize irregular protests days after their encampment was attacked by a mob and then cleared by the police. And for his handling of the situation, UCLA's chancellor could be facing a no-confidence vote and censure by the faculty senate. Idis Tanyashian, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Students at various European universities, inspired by demonstrations at U.S. campuses, have been occupying halls and facilities, demanding an end to partnerships with Israeli institutions. Now, these protests have sparked clashes and dozens of fresh arrests. Ken Brown has the latest on the streets of Madrid.
3,000 to 4,000 people on the streets of Madrid as pro-Palestinian groups have come together to protest against the Israeli offensive. Camps have popped up at the universities around Spain, like this one at the Complutense University of Madrid, amplifying and inspiring similar protests in Valencia, Barcelona, Alicante, and beyond. Students call for an end to the conflict and for Spain to stop buying and selling arms to Israel. Some 2,000 academics have openly supported their students, and the police response has been muted so far in Madrid.
We're all in solidarity with each other, even though we have different situations in each of our protests. But basically, we're all having the same demands, and all of us are protesting because of the same thing, which is basically the rights of the Palestinian people.
Palestinian cause is very important, and we have to defend the right of the Palestinian people to exist.
Elsewhere, things have not been so calm. At the University of Amsterdam, the police stormed a camp at 4 a.m., arresting around 125 activists, also using heavy machinery to break up one camp. The protests come as Israel signals a major expansion of its military operations into the city of Rafah in southern Gaza. Over 35,000 Palestinian people are reported to have lost their lives in this Israeli offensive, which has caused a humanitarian crisis. The World Food Programme says that 1.1 million people in Gaza are suffering catastrophic levels of hunger.
Stories from around the world about our world. A collaboration between CGTN and broadcasters from 6 continents. Each week, CGTN and its multimedia platforms showcase compelling reports followed by local and national media outlets from across the globe. One world, many voices. A special CGTN initiative. Our world, every week, only on CGTN. See the difference.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has appointed senior diplomat Xu Feihong as China's ambassador to India. Xu is a veteran diplomat with years of service experience in other countries. His career in the Chinese Foreign Ministry started in late 1980s, where Xu served in Finland, South Korea, New Zealand, and the UK. In 2008, he stepped in as Deputy Director General of the Chinese Foreign Ministry's European Department. In 2011, Xu served as China's envoy to Afghanistan. He served as China's ambassador to Romania from 2015 to 2018. 3 years ago, Xu assumed office as Assistant Foreign Minister. The Chinese ambassador to India role has been vacant since 2022. CGTN's Zheng Chunying spoke to Ambassador Xu Feihong.
First of all, what's your first reaction to the appointment to be the ambassador to India after a considerable hiatus?
It is my great honor to be appointed by His Excellency President Xi Jinping as the 17th Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the People's Republic of China to the Republic of India. It is an honorable mission and a sacred duty. I will do my best to deepen understanding and friendship between the two peoples, expand exchanges and cooperation in various fields, and improve and advance the bilateral relationship. I look forward to and I trust that I will have the support and assistance from the Indian government and friends from all sectors.
And what are some of your priorities soon after taking your post?
Both China and India boast time-honored civilizations. We are each other's important neighbors and the biggest emerging markets and developing countries of the world. As President Xi Jinping said, if China and India speak with one voice, the whole world will listen. If the two countries join hands, the whole world will pay attention. I will follow the important consensus between our leaders, reach out to friends from all sectors of India, earnestly enhance the understanding and trust between the two sides, work to restore exchanges and cooperation in various fields, and create favorable conditions for a sound and steady China-India relationship.
And how do you see the relations going forward in the light of the frequent mention of China-India strategic rivalry in the neighborhood and beyond?
President Xi and Prime Minister Modi have agreed on the important assessment that China and India are cooperation partners, not competitors, and reached an important common understanding that our two countries are each other's development opportunities, not threats. These should serve as the fundamental guidelines for the growth of bilateral relations. The world today is experiencing profound changes unseen in a century. We face multiple global challenges such as climate change, food and energy crisis, weak economic recovery, and so on. China and India hold similar positions when it comes to supporting multilateralism, promoting global recovery, safeguarding food security, responding to climate change, and etc. Closer communication and coordination on global and regional affairs will not only bring opportunities to both countries and the world, but also add stability and positivity to international relations. It will have an important positive impact on the development of a fair and reasonable international order.
That's going to do it for this edition of Zoom In. I'm Li Chuan in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Coming up next is Our World.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tianyi. Well, over to Asia, and rainy pattern will continue here for many of the northern half of Japan on Monday under the influence of an upper level of trough. But we can notice that cooler skies will soon return here to affect a vast majority of the nation as we head into Tuesday with quite a lot of cloudy conditions. And under this weather pattern, temperature across the majority of Japan will take a significant fluctuation from Monday into Tuesday, and a lot of cooler temperatures to develop here for many of Japan on Monday due to the rainy pattern. And here on Tuesday, there could see a significant rebound in high temperatures, and daily rise could be as much as 5 degrees Celsius, particularly for many of the northern portions. And after the rise, we can notice that many high temperatures here across the majority of Honshu will be from teens back up into the 20s as we head into early next week. So please be well prepared and dress up accordingly. And about business and travel, and clear skies for both Pyongyang and Seoul during the morning hours with high temperatures in the upper 20s here on Tuesday. Overcast conditions for Tokyo with high of 20 and low temperatures about 13 degrees Celsius. And up in Sapporo, and plenty of sunshine, but the temperatures difference between the highs and the lows will be rather big. So please pay special attention to the big temperatures difference between the highs and lows, and do wear an extra layer during the morning and evening hours to stay warm. And that is all from me. Stay tuned for more SID Forecast.
Welcome to Our World on CGTN. I'm Li Qiuyuan coming to you live in Beijing. Our top story, the first non-stop commercial flight from China to Mexico since pandemic restrictions were eased has just landed in Mexico City. The airline route links the two megacities of Shenzhen and Mexico City. CGTN's Xu Hua tells us the significance of this new long-haul route.
China's first ever non-stop air passenger flight to Mexico City took off from Shenzhen on Saturday night. With this route, Mexico is only 16 hours from China.
The Shenzhen-Mexico City route runs twice a week. The CZ8031 takes off from Shenzhen at 9 p.m. Beijing time and arrives in Mexico City at 11 p.m. local time, every Tuesday and Saturday. The return flight CZ8032 takes off from Mexico City at 1 p.m. local time, stops in Tijuana, and arrives in Shenzhen at 12:20 p.m. Beijing time every Wednesday and Sunday.
Passengers flying to Mexico and other Latin American destinations from China used to have to transit more than twice. Let's see what this new route will bring to visitors and businessmen.
The travel to Mexico to here was terrible because for us, first to Japan, and Japan to Shanghai, Shanghai to Hangzhou, Hangzhou to Shenyang. And now for me it's so cool because it's only one flight, one route, and yeah, it's better.
The non-stop journey is a response to a meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in San Francisco last year. One of the things they mentioned during the meeting was a need to develop better air connectivity.
Last year, our trade volume with Mexico exceeded $100 billion for the first time. The direct route will play a great role in facilitating economic and trade cooperation and people-to-people exchanges.
As for why the two sides choose Shenzhen for the new air route, the Mexican ambassador to China says the city is important for future investments.
Well, we have important companies from Shenzhen. Huawei is a major presence in Mexico. BYD is coming now. It's already selling lots of cars in Mexico. It's very clear that they will invest in Mexico.
The Mexico ambassador to China sends a very clear message for Chinese companies to come and invest in Mexico, which he says will further deepen the cooperation between the two sides in the future. Xu Hua, CGTN, Shenzhen.
North China's port city of Tianjin has launched a new sea route to the east coast of South America. This will facilitate trade between China and countries in South America with upgraded transport capacity. Now, this footage is courtesy of Greater Asia TV. The route will provide a more convenient maritime channel for the import of South American goods, including soybeans, coffee beans, cocoa, and iron ore. It will also benefit the export of Chinese essential goods, chemicals, furniture, cars, and spare parts. The route will shorten the delivery time between Tianjin and Brazil by 14 days. China has been Brazil's largest trading partner for 15 consecutive years, while Brazil remains China's largest partner in Latin America. The household appliances replacement program has been rolled out in Shanghai, part of China's effort to boost consumption. It provides impressive discounts for customers. It also contributes to environmental protection. This footage comes courtesy of Greater Asia TV. According to an e-commerce sales manager, the number of customers has increased significantly as a 35 to 40% discount was offered to customers if they bring their old TVs, refrigerators, and microwaves to stores to get the latest novelties with a surcharge. Local authorities, as well as representatives of household appliance brands and the sellers themselves, offer special subsidies for this. Moreover, more expensive models have become in demand. The main condition is that the new purchase must meet the latest energy efficiency requirements. Elsewhere, Macau is seeing an increase of tourists engaging in gastronomical adventures as they sample on the island city's best cuisine with the help of social media. Now, this footage is courtesy of Telediffusion of Macau.
Many tourists have thoroughly planned their Macau trip, spending hours just seeking out hidden gourmet spots and sharing their check-in photos on social media.
I have eaten a bowl of beef entrails, beef tender noodles, and coconut ice cream.
I usually use the internet to find restaurants with good food, and then I save them to the map on my phone. We didn't plan the route to the location in detail. We just go wherever we want. When we are close to the bookmarked location, we will head straight there.
There wasn't much information to be found on the internet before. It has been a long time since I last visited Macau. Right now, there are a lot of opportunities to visit the city. I did search online for some secret eateries when I planned my trip here. Some businesses praise the current trend in tourist behavior.
Some netizens think that our egg tarts and bread taste good. They take the check-in photos and post them on social media. Many overseas tourists, especially Korean and Japanese, will do the check-in at our bakery during holidays and eat our food.
We have mainland customers. Many of them didn't know our place until it was suggested by someone. They probably rarely know about us. Right now, the customer number has increased by at least a third.
With the surge in customers, the businesses are hoping that the authorities will improve road conditions in the area.
Dhabi hosted the first ever high-speed race of the Autonomous Racing League at the Yas Marina circuit. 8 teams from all over the world demonstrated their artificial intelligence-powered cars. The prize fund is almost $2.5 million. And the main award is the title of Pioneer of Racing Technologies of the Future. Teams from Hungary, Germany, Switzerland, USA, Singapore, Italy, and the UAE and China took part in the race. Unlike conventional racing cars, self-driving cars are equipped with a set of 7 cameras, 3 laser detectors, and 4 radar sensors. At the same time, its own algorithms were developed for each machine. An exhibition dedicated to the rich traditions of Turkmenistan's crafts have been held in the country's capital, Ashgabat. Now, this footage is courtesy of TVTM. Decorated with gems and emeno, delicate bracelets, necklaces made of silver and gold adorn the exhibition. Turkmen handmade carpets known for their beauty and unique ornaments were also presented. Elegant painted bowls, plates, teapots, and other products delighted visitors with their colorful design and skillful painting. In addition to handcrafts, the exhibition featured national costumes reflecting the culture of Turkmenistan. Visitors to the exhibition could not only enjoy these works of art, but also learn about the secrets of their production, passed down from generation to generation.
In our creative center, there are several groups that teach schoolgirls national craft. Jewelry making is not just a craft, but a real art. It combines beauty, craftsmanship, and painstaking work. This is a gupa, a traditional women's headdress worn by women in Turkmenistan. This is a cap decorated with embroidery, beads, and other decorative elements. It has always been an important part of Turkmen culture, symbolizing femininity, modesty, and status. The exhibition presents the works of our talented craftsmen in various fields: jewelry, carpets, embroidery, and much more. Turkmen handmade carpets are especially distinguished by their beauty. These works of art are known all over the world for their beauty and unique ornamentation. National crafts are part of our culture, our heritage. By preserving these traditions, we pass them on to future generations.
Today is Mother's Day. No matter where we are in the world, maternal love is universal and often considered the warmest. Students from China, Tajikistan, Egypt, Mongolia, Russia, and Liberia, all studying at Tianjin foreign universities, share their stories about mom.
ما همه تاریخ گوناگون داریم.
У нас разные культуры и обычаи.
Миний бодлоор би их өвөрмөц, та ч гэсэн.
نحن مختلفون جدا ولكننا متشابهون جدا.
我的母亲比较喜欢吃面条，
她很喜欢学习。
她的思想就也挺天马行空的，因为她总是会有很多的新点子。
她是一个很努力，就是能承受压力的特别美的人。
我15、16岁的时候，经常会给她做饭。刚来中国不习惯吃中餐，就是每天自己做飯。那時候我發現還是挺有用的，幸虧當時她教我做飯。
We have our traditional food is called potato greens, and that's my favorite dish that she always made. 她每次寄東西還會放一些市面上都可以買到的很便宜的零食啊什麼什麼的，
一起寄过来，我就感觉有点遭运费。
如果就是我的有什么烦恼或者有不满的事情，他只是看我的眼神就知道我的心里在想什么。
他跟我说：“儿子，你实现了我的梦想。”因为他的梦想就是去学习、上大学、出国留学。
其实是我也是一个妈妈，然后我生孩子的时候啊，我感觉到非常非常痛苦、非常痛的感觉嘛。可是呢，他一摸我，好像是跟魔术一样的感觉，就是突然不同的那种感觉。
我特别小的时候，连着1-2年吧，就是给我妈妈做了特别漂亮的生日贺卡。长大之后，我在她的抽屉里看到，她还一直存在那里。但是我已经很多年没有给她做过生日贺卡了。
可是我也是不是很经常跟她说我想你啊，我爱你啊，我没有经常跟她说。
I miss her a lot.
妈妈，
妈妈，
妈妈，妈妈，
妈妈，妈妈，
妈妈，妈妈，أنا بحبك.
I love you so much.
我爱你，妈妈。
Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And thank you so much for watching. That's going to do it for this hour's Our World. I'm Lieutenant Beijing. Bye for now.